The Alfie Whattam podcast.
Last kind of story is around Mr. Musk's The Boring Company. So Tesla vehicles recently moved 100,000 people inside the Boring Company tunnels at CES conference, which I believe is just over like a weekend or a couple of days. So the vision of the Boring Company is starting to become a little bit more real. Got a clip here from a few years ago, but it's very relevant. I'll show this to you. Please turn on video if you're listening on audio only. If you're on YouTube, you should see the video. If you're on Spotify, make sure that you sign in for free if you haven't already to watch the video. Here we have a Tesla pulling up to the Boring Company tunnel. For the uninitiated, these are essentially tunnels which Mr. Musk has dug under the ground to get from point A to point B. Obviously, the fastest way of doing it is a straight line. There's some bends in it, but you know what I mean. As opposed to being stuck in traffic all day, we could have a future where we have these under the ground, spanning miles, connecting cities, countries, and so on. Hundreds, if not thousands, of these with cars whizzing around. Flying cars seemed a little bit too dangerous for him, so going under the ground is perhaps a little bit easier. And there it is, pulling up to its destination, getting from point A to point B in record speed, no traffic, no red lights, no delays, no nonsense. That's the Boring Company. And the reason for showing this, despite the clip being a bit old, is now it's starting to become a reality. We're no longer just talking about the Boring Company as an idea. We're starting to actually see it being used in the real world. What's everyone's thoughts on the Boring Company? Phil, do you want to kick us off?
It's really interesting. So I know this summer I'm going to drive down to France for a lovely holiday, and I'm kind of the drive is the holiday. Really, you know, we'll be stopping off along the way. It'll be really nice. Yeah. All I could think about when I was watching that is like my kids in the back of the car going, "Are we there yet?" And me going, "I've got no idea." I've got absolutely no idea. I think maybe. So, I get it. I think it's just. I mean, it's in the name, isn't it? It's just really boring. Yeah. It's just really boring about that idea of just needing to be somewhere and not really enjoying the journey. Sure. And again, it probably makes me think. You know, your life is that journey, and you should enjoy it, not just think about the destination. Yeah. For it all, really. So. I think that's where I am. As I say, I'll always just kind of think about my kids in the car. They're going, "What is this? Like, I can't see anything. Like, I can't even point out any cows or anything anymore. I can't. I end up in a point where my kids are looking at screens in the car, which I don't know. Will they get motion sickness as well? And then if they need the toilet, where do they stop?
Well, I suppose they wouldn't be able to, would they, if they needed the bathroom? But it'll be self-driving. You'd have the huge Tesla iPad screen so they could watch a movie or something. But I suppose, you know, as opposed to it taking 5 hours, it would take, 30 minutes. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. For you, you might like that commute, might like drive. But if someone's busy, they're trying to get to a meeting, trying to get to an airport, perhaps that's a better use case in that situation. But yeah, interesting take. What's your view, Pablo, on kind of this clip and the Boring Company becoming more mainstream?
Yeah, I think it's a bit similar to Phil. It's a tunnel. We've been doing them in London for like how long? 120 years. Yeah. No, I understand that in a country, and like I am not being judgy here, a country that moves mostly by cars and doesn't have the mass transit solution. And the mass transit solutions that work in Europe cannot just be applied to the US and expect them to work because their geography is different. Yeah. They want a solution that is car-based. Yeah. And when you run out of space in the cities, you might go and like, okay, we make a tunnel. Yeah. But it's not the original promise of the Boring Company, which was hundreds of miles of tunnel that are in vacuum so that a pod can travel at 400 miles an hour because there's no resistance. Like that, all of that disappeared, and now it's just a tunnel. Yeah. And I do wonder, like there's another thing that tunnel only works with something that is self-driven, right?
I believe so, yeah. I don't think you can like drive around in these independently, yeah.
And one of the things that I remember from the 90s about when we were starting to research self-driving cars was how you could form trains of self-driving cars in the motorway so that they would drive very close to each other so that they would be more space efficient and also do sleep streaming so that they were more energy efficient. And I haven't heard these at all. Like that would mean that the current infrastructure that we have, the motorways, would be more suited for the amount of traffic that we have.
You always used to see them on the test tracks, didn't you?
Yeah.
Like German test tracks with 10 cars.
10 cars, one like very close to each other, and the cars communicating with each other.
Because all the cars definitely have sensors on them, like auto brake and everything like that. But you're right, it hasn't really gone much further than that.
It disappeared, even though we're getting very close tech-wise to having that.
Yeah.
Or maybe we aren't. I don't know.
What's your take, Lorenzo, on the Boring Company? When you see this clip, do you is that something that excites you? Would you like to get inside one of these? What's your point of view on this?
I am fascinated by the ending of the video, where this car pop-ups and goes in a very nicely, in a very nice round platform at the end. So I'm thinking, how will the cities will look like after that? We can, if we hide all the infrastructure we currently have, all that highways and roads, etc. If you put that underground, suddenly we have more parks, we have more way to reach, to walk outside, we have pedestrian areas, we have a whole new city, because city adapts to the type of transportation you have. A lot of cities are built around cars, around buses and the tube, etc. But right now, we are introducing a new way of transportation. That means we can have really have parks. You can be in a city center, but like in Hyde Park all the time. You can. I'm amazed thinking about these possibilities. And suddenly, all the countryside, maybe it won't have visible roads. Maybe it will be harder to reach, but it will be more natural in a sense. So I'm fascinated by that. And in this podcast, you also showed a couple episodes ago that Uber helicopters, for example.
Oh, yes, that was a great episode. Yeah, so that's the opposite of this, right? This is going under. This is the same concept, but just Uber is now releasing helicopters soon.
Yeah. Are we going to see helipad everywhere now? Suddenly, will we have regulation about that? How will the city look like? No, if we can compress the city, if we can compress villages, we can achieve a much better city around that. So it's not just the transportation I see, is how urbanization and transportation affect each other.
Yeah. What about, like, if we had to predict if this is going to really, really take off or just remain, like, small? Like, do you think these are just going to be, just used by rich people to quickly get to an airport, perhaps? Or do you see a possibility where these could be everywhere? You could travel to a different city, you could travel to a different country and be there in a couple of hours. And we're seeing all the climate change talk around planes not being great for the environment. I don't know what impact this has, but I can't imagine it's much if it's an electric car and it's not really producing any fumes. It's underground, right? So do you think this is going to take off and could transform the world, or do you think it will just stay small? What would your guesstimates be, Pablo?
I don't know. It does. So from once it's there, the operation, I agree.
Yeah.
Now making that whole, that is very expensive.
Yeah.
And depending on what the ground is made out of, you might not be able to, whether because it's too hard or too soft. Then
sure.
It's not an option. So I don't know. I think it's limited in the same way that you cannot have a metro or tube system in many places.
Yeah.
And once you're out of the cities, it's not worth being underground anymore. Like you just go up because there's space there.
Yeah.
I think the self-driving part is going to entirely change cities. I have written a blog post some time ago about that. I think self-driving cars are going to end cities. Because if you need the self-driving car for the tunnel, so I don't see the tunnel happening without the self-driving car ending the city that requires the tunnel.
Yeah.
Because when I was buying a house, if I had the option of a self-driving car in which I could just sit there and work for 2 hours,
sure,
and then after I went to the pub in London, after a couple of beers, and I don't have to drive, but I can sit on my car for a couple of hours taking a nap while I go home, I wouldn't be living in London.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. What's your take, Phil? Do you think this is going to be everywhere, or do you think this is going to stay small?
I think it will stay small, this one, if I had to kind of go binary on it.
Sure.
Are they privately owned, these tunnels? Are they? Is that the idea, or is it?
I think Elon's owns a Boring Company. I think they're his tunnels. I don't think it's. He'll have to get government permission, but I don't think it's a state utility. I believe it's. You might have to pay a toll or something if you want to use one, but I think it's his.
I just don't see how that would work, really. But it's that, I kind of think about challenges of like HS2 train lines, and and greenbelt land and things like that, and then all of a sudden you're going, well, you don't own the land that is 100 meters below your field, and you're like,
Yeah.
yes, I do.
That's interesting. I don't know how that works. Does he own the land, or does he just
Exactly.
randomly digging tunnels everywhere
Exactly.
under your house? I mean,
So when Pablo said, it sounds really expensive, not only the boring of the holes, but actually, are you trying to buy like strips of land to do this? I just
expensive.
I just don't see how it's logistically possible. So I just can't see it really taken off in Europe anyway.
Sure.
Maybe in cities, where you would have like the tube network, you may have large tunnels underneath, but but then you've really got to use electric vehicles to only use them. Otherwise, you end up with more black wall tunnels, right? Don't you?
Yeah, that's where everything's heading anyway. So I mean, that's less of a concern. But what's your take, Lorenzo, on the possibility of these being mainstream or going to zero?
Ultimately, we need technology to be affordable to go really mainstream. And historically, technology start for rich people, and then it get cheaper and cheaper, and get broader adoption there, right? So I think it is still too much of a niche right now. Probably I don't see the demand right now to have this type of transportation, but maybe I don't have enough imagination. What are we going to need to have multiple cities? Are we going to have that type of fast travel? I don't see that need right now, unless for some specific business purpose rather than commercial purpose rather than private ones.
Sure.
And if we think about helicopters, for example, which is like the opposite of that, we do need that because cities are congested right now. So maybe if we can hide all that traffic infrastructure, if there was no traffic, maybe that wouldn't be a problem, right? So maybe we need to hide that traffic. Maybe we'll need like shorter ones. Maybe we'll need cheaper one. And I can see that being more, that the way to get faster adoption on it.
What about there's a theory that the reason Elon Musk has built the Boring Company is because his ultimate goal is to get to Mars, right? That's what he says. And on Mars, he has SpaceX to get people there. He has Tesla, which could be argued, there's no fuel on Mars. You need to have electric vehicles to move around. OpenAI and how that connects to robotics. You need to have robots doing the work. Solar cities, you collect the sun, and then that powers everything that's happening. And then potentially the Boring Company, because it's really hot up there. And if you can dig tunnels underground and build cities underground, then maybe this is a test to get to that point in the future. Which poses an interesting question, right? If you had a free ticket to go to Mars, if I said, hey, I don't have one, by the way, but if I did say, here's a free ticket, we'll send you up on the is it Starship? His big one that's going to get us there. Would you take it? Would you be like, yep, I'm going to go to Mars, or are you no, I'm not for me? What's your take, Phil? What do you think?
Well, I think it's I go back to the why, right? So if you automate it all and you're only traveling underground, why, right? Why would I put myself through that, right? So it depends. I don't know what the sightseeing tourist attractions are going to be like on Mars. I mean, maybe going up Olympus Mons might be quite cool to say, I've been up the highest mountain in our solar system. So I don't know. I think
you're not coming back, by the way. I mean, there's no return trip. If the first people that go to Mars, they're in Mars. I mean, they're going to die there.
They're going to die there. Yeah. I might decline.
Okay. So you're a no. That's fine.
I'll be a laggard. I'll be a laggard on that one, maybe.
Wait for a few, because a few of those ships are going to blow up on the way. There's no way that's going to be smooth sailing. So you wait for it to get a little bit more, risk averse, and then perhaps to take a trip when there's something more exciting there than underground rocks.
Yeah, and obviously if they can accelerate the journey, and maybe a return ticket is optional, that would be something that I might go for.
What do you think, Lorenzo? Would you go to Mars if you had a free ticket?
I'll pass.
You'll pass?
I'm very scared of
You guys are all scared of it.
I feel scared of this. Of course, there's a huge adrenaline potential there, but I don't think it's for me. I like to experience the heart a bit more. I think there's so much diversity here.
Yeah.
And so far we talk about underground, but the purpose is to go somewhere else on top of it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Mars makes sense to be just underground, but then, as Phil said, why would I just stay underground?
Yeah, I mean, for some people, it's legacy. It's being the first pioneers there to do it. But in terms of quality of life, going to Mars isn't going to be some vacation for rich people. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be loads of hard work. You're going to die there. You're going to die young, probably. We don't know what the impacts are on, can you get pregnant in Mars? Who knows? Who knows what can happen? There's little rocks just constantly flying around Mars, and so you can't go for a walk. You'll just get smashed and destroyed. What would you say, Pablo? Free ticket to Mars? Yes or no?
If you asked me when I was a teenager, the answer would have been yes. Right now, I appreciate the infrastructure of Earth a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I like the fact that there's hospitals. Like, if you get injured, there's a hospital that you can
it's
go
a luxury,
to.
Right?
Right. Yeah. No, it's amazing. People don't realize how amazing it is that you can arrive at a building that has MRI machine and CT scanners and so on. People don't realize that how amazing it is that there's insurance. Like, your house burns down and you apply for money to buy another one. You're not going to have that on Mars.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'll be the contrarian.
The premiums might be high though. Actually, you might do. The premiums might be high, and the servicing time might be a bit low. But
yeah, no, it would be a miserable experience. I'd be crazy enough to probably say yes and do it, but I know I'd regret it the instant that the rocket ship took off and I looked back on Earth, going, "What the hell have I just done?" But who knows?
Hey, thanks for watching this YouTube video. If you want to see more like this, please remember to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.